Um, I'm Michele Norris, and I'm joined by someone who spent a lot of time at the White House, working in the White House, hosting people at the White House, um, ushering all kinds of people into a White House that is now quite different than it was at the start of this week. We've all seen the pictures of the demolition on the East Wing. I'm joined by Deesha Dyer. She is a former White House social secretary under the Obama administration. She is so much more than that. She is also the author of a book called Undiplomatic that you all need to read. And she travels the world. She does all kinds of wonderful philanthropic work. But right now, I want to talk to her about her role as the White House secretary. And when I saw these images, I have to tell you, Deesha, first of all, thanks for being with me.
Mhm.
You were one of the first people that I thought of
Mm.
because your
Yeah.
office was there. It is the
Mhm.
most public facing part of the building. And when you go to visit the building, that's where you usually enter. That's where most people, if they have been in the White House, have come in or have exited through, not the dip room, not the other, sort of secret entrances that are only for the people that work there. They walk in up those stairs and into the East
Mhm.
Wing, often with a Marine Corps band playing there,
Mhm.
welcoming them during the
Yeah.
Christmas holidays. What
Mhm.
are your thoughts right now?
I mean, I'm in shock. I mean, I think that it's just shock right now. It's sadness, it's shock, it's just reminiscing about all those things that you just mentioned. It's wondering how, not how we got here, but just how we let this happen. How one of our most historical buildings just went down just like that. How if I wanted to demolish the building that I live in, it would take longer and more approvals than what it did for a national landmark. So I'm just very my heart is just all over the place. I think it represents what we're going through in the country right now with housing and healthcare and food and government shutdown and layoffs. And I'm sad, but I'm motivated to keep fighting. It's just that's not gonna scare me. We're gonna keep doing what we have to do.
Your office was in the East Wing. Can you tell us a
Yes.
little bit about that wing of the building? Who worked
Yes.
there? What
Hmm.
happened there?
Hmm.
Many of us have seen pictures. Many of us have been there, but just describe
Hmm.
it and tell us a little bit about the function of the East
You're
Wing.
right. Yeah, the East Wing is the first space that people hit when they come in for an event or a tour or anything else. When we were there, it housed the White House Military Office, it housed the White House Visitors Office, the White House Legislative Office, and then the Office of the First Lady, which is where I work, which was upstairs in the East Wing. And the function of it really is to serve as the welcome, as the entrance to this grand building that's a museum and an office and also a residence, right? To let people know that that this is your house. Please look on the walls, hear the music, take your photos, say hello to the Secret Service guard that's standing there that is more than willing to tell you about the history of the building, or go in the East reception room where you can wait for your guests and put your coat down and gather yourself before you have a meeting with the first lady or any of the staff down there. That was the feeling that we got. We had the theater there as well. I mean, it was a feeling of just culture and welcome and history, and it was warm, especially on the days of the Christmas parties that we have 1,800 people. They would get inside and be like, oh, it's so warm in here, and they would hear the music and be greeted with hot chocolate or eggnog. It was that vibe really that's gone now, and I can't say that it was there once the Trumps moved back in, but I know that for us that was everything to us to be able to give people that, and for Mrs. Obama to be able to give people that.
Well, this administration was welcoming people at the White House, and
Hmm.
that's often where they enter
Hmm.
too. And part of the White House is the whole notion of continuity, that no
Hmm.
matter who lives there, whether it's an R or a D, whether you agree with them or not, that the building provides a sense of continuity in a
Hmm.
democracy.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that continuity is gone. I think it's been gone for a while. I think the other thing about that continuity is because we have people in the building that are career employees, that they are the resident staff from, the butlers and the ushers and the operations folks, the cater, the chefs, the curators, the calligraphers. They all are careers, so they have a different reverence and relationship with the house than so many of us did, because that's essentially they're stuck at home. They've been there for 20, 30 years. So the welcome and the warm, I think, that people may have felt when they went in the past couple of months was really because that staff made it that way and they
You
kept it that way.
you mentioned the curators. You would sometimes see
Hmm.
them at the White House,
Hmm.
wearing gloves because they're careful about
Yes.
how they touch everything or where they you'd see them adjusting something that,
Yeah.
got moved or something.
Hmm.
What must this be like for them? How much
Mm.
notice did they get? Did they have time to actually take things out of that space? And not
Yeah.
just the things on the wall, but even the paneling, the beautiful, wrought iron stairway that you walked up,
Hmm.
the railings. I mean, all of those have historic significance. What
Yeah.
what happened to the sort of architectural relics that were in
Hmm.
that space?
I wish I knew. I'm sure we'll find out in a matter of days when maybe it's, on the internet on eBay or something. But I just feel like, I wish I knew. I'm hoping that the curators had a chance to get all those historic pieces out of there before the demolition began. I can't imagine what they're going through. Obviously, they're consummate professionals and, won't talk, but like, I can't imagine what they're going through just seeing all of this happen in a space like you mentioned, where they did have gloves on because they wanted to preserve everything. Or, there were times where we'd have holiday decorations and you've seen them hanging from the walls, but we couldn't really put it on the wall because it would ruin the paneling or the paint. Or, it was a fragile building in the sense that like it was old and historic, but it was strong and it stood for so much. And so I'm not sure, what they think, but I can imagine that they're going through their own level of sadness.
Do you know anything about the permitting process and what normally would have to happen before this kind of demolition took place? I mean, the pictures that we've seen during the week, you see kind of like windows hanging askew. Wouldn't that
Yeah.
window be something that someone would want to preserve for, the National Building Museum, any one of a number of presidential libraries? Might they have wanted the columns or the windows or some of the pieces that were inside that structure?
Yeah, I don't know too much about the permit process, but I do know that there is a commission that is supposed to be, kind of, consulted, and also the approval process through. I think there's probably many. I mean, I can't even imagine just for our own houses or places how many permits that we have to get through the city and the state and all these other things. So there is these processes I'm not as familiar with, but I do know that on these commissions are Trump appointed people also. So if you get the people, and that's, again, what we're dealing with of if you align, these commissions and these courts and things with your people, then you can kind of skirt the process because the people that are supposed to keep you in check are the people that are in your pocket. So all of that, for better, for worse, for the saying, went out the window. It did. And I'm hoping that, all of that was preserved. And, they're saying now that, we plan on showing you and getting you in the loop of everything. But we have no reason to believe that. And what loop?
I
What
mean,
the
it's the
loop? The
building's
loop is
gone
gone.
now,
It's
right?
gone. So
It's
what loop?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's is my father used to say, a day late and a dollar short.
Yeah.
Trying
Way.
to
Yeah. $300
kind of
million dollars short.
so right, right, right. When there is work at the White House, sometimes it is shrouded from public view, as it
Hmm.
was, explained to me that you don't want the public to see the damage to the building. Almost like you want to make sure that the building is pristine and that its image is preserved, even if something, is happening beneath that almost looks violent. In this case, they
Hmm.
didn't hide it. I think that's part of what
Hmm.
hurts is that the construction equipment almost looks like a giant dinosaur that is
Right.
coming in and just chomping
Yeah.
away at the building.
Hmm. Hmm. And to me, honestly, I don't think I want it hidden. I want people to see,
Ah,
the
uh-huh.
because I want them to understand. Like for the people that didn't understand how major of a crisis that we're in, I'm hoping that this does it. And I'm not proud or happy that that this should be their line, but I want them to see like what the damage that's done to one of these historic buildings, that's done to this national treasure that has been stood the test of time. The East Wing has been there for about 83 years, I believe, right? So I want people to see that and say, this is a representation of all that's happening right now. And we realize that this person is power hungry, he's money hungry, he's, has this ego. So perhaps I should pay a little bit closer attention to what's happening to my rights and policies and things in the court, because look how easy it was. like in a matter of days to just destroy this. And again, I work in social work, so I can't compare a building to people needing food, but for some people that connection is going to be made. And so I'm happy that it was public so people could see the gross
Mm.
misuse of power that is happening right now in Washington.
Were you surprised at how quickly it happened?
Oh, very surprised. I mean, from yesterday to when I was just, it just like right now. I mean,
Mm.
at first I admit that I didn't believe that it was real. Like I didn't.
I thought it was an AI image also.
Yeah, I was preoccupied with other things that from this administration. So I was like, and so when I saw it, I was like, wait, this is not just the trees outside or just the Secret Service tent outside that was destroyed. It was a whole side of a building. And then it was a whole wing. So I was very surprised that it happened so fast. But this is what happens when you A probably have something to cover up and B, you want to show everybody who's king.
What is to stop an administration that does not follow rules, does not go through the permitting process, does not follow standard protocols? What is to prevent them from tearing other things down?
Nothing.
I mean, it's a difficult question to ask, but we must contemplate it now.
Nothing. I mean, the same way that there's nothing to stop them from grabbing people off the streets. There's nothing to stop them from, like, detaining people. There is no checks and balances or due process, right now, as far as what's held us and what's stopped them in the past. Again, they got their pockets lined with each other. So, they're gonna look out for each other. That's what they do. And so there is no stop. But I think that there's going to eventually they're going to get tired or eventually somebody's going to flip or eventually it's going to get so bad where they're going to have to stop, and I don't know what that point is going to be. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's violence. I don't know what's going to happen, but I
Mm.
think that we have to continue to stay united in what we feel and be in our communities and lift each other up and continue to fill in the gaps where the system fails, and that is really where I focus.
You're talking about they, and you're referring to the Trump administration, but there's
Yes,
something
I am.
interesting here. Is this something in a very divided moment in America, a highly
Hmm.
partisan moment in America? Is this the kind of thing that will create a sort of unity in among the people who are horrified on all sides? I mean, I'm talking to you because I know you and you worked in the Obama administration, but I think if I talk to
Hmm.
someone who worked in the Clinton administration, in Bush 1 or 2, in the Reagan administration, going back, in the Kennedy administration, going further back than that, I think that anyone who has either a reverence for the building because they are an American and they love it, or a reverence for the building because they worked inside those walls would be united in horror right now and
Yes,
what's going on.
100%. I agree with that. I think that there is a unity in the folks that you just mentioned, right? Like the Bush Republicans or probably even the Reagan Republicans, but I think that or the obviously the Democratic side with Biden and Clinton and Obama, but I think that we have to remember that we're dealing with people that are irrational on a whole nother level. A whole nother level of patriots as they call it themselves, that don't see themselves. It's funny to them. They don't. They're like they like the gaudiness. They like the horror. They like the violence that's happening in the buildings. Like so, I don't think that it's going to unify them in any way or get them back to a sensible place. I think that that's not going to do it. I think what's going to
But
do it is when they
outside the
are
building, I wonder if
outside.
outside the building, if
Yeah.
Republicans and Democrats will be united in some way to try to. I
Mm.
don't know what they can do. You can't
Yeah.
stop it. It's already gone.
It's already
But I
gone.
wonder if
Yeah.
it is an odd bipartisan moment.
Yeah, I think that I would like to say that it is, but I think that unfortunately we're in a world in which a lot of Republicans are scared of the retaliation. And so they'll either say nothing or they will support. And I think that if they say nothing, like that's probably what they feel like is a safer bet until they have to say something. So I think that behind closed doors, they could probably be like, that was horrible. But then, they'll never say something publicly because they have too much to risk. They have too much to lose, and so I don't think that they will. And I don't think it'll unite us. I think that no, I don't think that's going to do it.
Hmm. The timing is interesting also because people
Hmm.
who work inside the White House would be busy as elves right now, getting
Yeah.
ready for the elaborate Christmas display, which is um, that hallway was always
Yeah.
transported into some sort of magical space. Help us understand what normally would be happening in that space, and it's a chance for you to go down memory lane as we talk about that.
Right. Yeah. Right now in October, I mean, there would be meetings upon meetings upon meetings in the theater. We would always gather with the whole team to kind of go over everything, the designs for the holiday season that was coming up, including Thanksgiving, and then going into, all of the parties that we would have. And we'd be preparing and walking around and saying, this will go here, this drawing, getting ready for the First Lady's approval. And so, kind of getting all the linens together, all the decor together, all the drawings together, and walking, being able to then, as we would do with Mrs. Obama, walk around and say, this is what we had proposed for this is what will be here. So that's what normally would be going on right now, in addition to all the fall things that happen, just the regular events there. It is right after Thanksgiving is when actually the decorating actually begins. And it happens in a matter of 3 days. Like they
Wait,
actually
3
tore
days.
that
So explain
three
that. 3
days,
days,
3 days,
because it's
three
amazing what they
days,
do to transform the building. How are
three
there
days.
volunteers or just small army of
Yes,
people that do this?
yes, yes, and so and they knock down the building faster than what it takes to decorate the White House. But
Wait,
we
wait.
there's
So
an
I'm
army.
sorry. Say
Yeah,
that again. Say
they
that
knock
again.
down they knock down the building faster than it takes to decorate it for Christmas. And the whole entire building, including the residents, including the West Wing, gone. But what normally happens for the holidays is that there are volunteers that come from every state. And so they come, and they come the day after, they come the day of Thanksgiving. They spend Thanksgiving in Washington, D.C. And the next morning they get up at about 6 a.m., 7 a.m., and they are all bussed along with most likely the social office or the visitor's office team out to the warehouse. It's a warehouse that has every like Christmas decoration, furniture, all the things, so we can then recycle and reuse whatever's out there. They do things like taking hooks off of old, decor. They get all the untwist the wreaths, like all the things, and they load it up then to come back to the White House. And then the next day is when actually they start putting it all in the house. So there's volunteers from the West Wing to the East Wing, kind of just getting it all together. You're assigned to a station. And it's actually kind of fun. My husband, I think, did it for 2 years, but like it's actually kind of fun where you get to just like decorate and you get to see, every kind of just transform. And as a social secretary, I'd walk through, I'd help when I could, or, but that would really like the role of the residence team too, to really like get that together and be able to transform the house. And then usually HGTV comes in and documents the whole thing. So it's always a HGTV special and people watch it every year. But it was so great because you would have these volunteers like grandmothers and aunts and like, people that retired. We have a lot of retirees and they would do it every year with their aprons. I mean, it was a blast. And at the end, they got to celebrate, with the first lady at a reception that was just for them, saying thank you. Thank you for what you did for the house.
There's that long hallway that
Yes.
connects the East Wing to the residence. Is
Mhm.
your understanding that hallway where the movie theater is, which is often turned into the coat check,
Mhm.
is that's all gone and then it stops at the residence?
Yeah,
The
from the
de the
drawings
de
the
demolition stops at the residence.
from the drawings of what I saw, and I have to look again, I think that hallway is partially still there because they're gonna connect that to the ballroom. So I
Okay.
think that that's what I was on, but I think that they mi from the drawings, I have to look again, but they might have gotten rid of that whole thing, and, where booksellers is, I think that that might have to be the connection to the ballroom. So I'm not quite sure, like, what if that hallway, how far they went down or if it's still there, but it looks like there's some type of hallway that's still there that goes to the ballroom.
So, in a previous administration, my husband had actually worked in the East Wing and
Mhm,
Legislative Affairs Office, so their offices
mhm,
are there, the First Lady's offices are there, the calligraphy office is somewhere in there, there's a
mhm.
military office. Where did they all go?
So, from my understanding, is that some of the offices are now located in the EEOB, the Eisenhower Executive Building, which is right next door to the White House on the other side of the West Wing, still on a complex, which is where most of the White House employees are held.
Mhm.
I also heard that some employees are now in some of the rooms, like the China room and the map room, some of the more diplomatic rooms.
The building was improved
Mhm,
in the Roosevelt years. The
mhm,
East Wing was improved in the Roosevelt years, and it was kind of a head fake because they were actually improving it and making it more of a visitor center, and at the same time, they were building this underground bunker,
mhm.
beneath it, and it was so, they didn't want other people to know, obviously, that this
Yeah.
was happening. What happens to that? The
From
Presidential
right.
Emergency I wanna make sure I get the name right. Is the Presidential Emergency Command Center? It's different from the Situation Room, but it is
Yeah.
a special bunker that would provide, some measure of safety, and they were concerned about that as we were heading into a Cold War.
Yeah, well, from what I read is that they kept that bunker and are going to be expanding it and making it more, making it more probably lavish is probably the word, but making it more extensive. But again, that's just what I read somewhere. But I imagine that because the military aides also are down there, so I feel like I imagine they kept that. And it's for the president's safety, so it's a priority. So I think that that's still there.
Um, have you been thinking about the military aides that were
Mm,
usually there? I mean, I that's one of the first things that I also thought about is the band playing right outside the doors,
mhm,
the Marines that would greet you,
mhm.
and how proud they seem to be of that particular assignment, to watch
Yeah,
people walk in awe in that
yeah.
space.
I think about them. I mean, part of it is also because the work I do, like this morning, helping a military family, get food that's actually on SNAP, right? And I think about, the military members, how they signed up to serve and they signed up to do it with honor and how they must feel, just kind of being, part of this whole shenanigans without, their consent. Like they're doing with their orders and they're also proud to be in the White House and have their talents displayed and serve the president. I mean that's an honor, like it's like this is like the Secret Service is an honor. So I can't imagine personally what some of them are going through, having to see and feel this. And they have families, they're not robots, so they have families. They serve that space, with honor, just like the resident staff, the chefs and the butlers or the grounds crew, the National Park Service. Like they served those offices with honor. And so to see this, I just can't imagine what it must feel for them. And I'm hoping that they know that they are so valued and so they're appreciated in that space regardless of what they see or feel on a daily basis.
Couple last quick questions. Is there a logistical concern here? Because that
Mm,
building that part of the building didn't serve a function. It was the foyer.
mhm.
It was, the
Mm.
place where you could usher people, they could go through security, and then they walked through a second wave, and then they came in through the house. With that gone, uh, how do they handle a large flow of visitors that you would probably expect to see during the holiday season in particular?
Well, I don't know if they're gonna have a large I don't know if they're going I don't know what kind of, social events they have or how big their events are, but I imagine that they're going to just bring them in a different way, perhaps the front gate, perhaps the West Wing side. I'm not quite sure, but I could see that. I could see them, having, press photos of people walking in, the front door. That's an image that they probably want of like, look at us, look how many people want to come through, look how beautiful this building still is, even though we've demolished this part, right? So I am sure that they're still going to figure out ways to bring people through, maybe the way we used to do Halloween through the South Gate or whatever. So I figured they're going to figure that out. And still will have that, but they'll make it a press moment of, look at us, like look at us entertaining people and we bring the people in and we're welcoming too, so they'll flip the script, but they'll still have people in there, their people, of course. So yeah.
I'd heard that, as busy as you were, you used to sometimes sneak
Mhm.
down to the East Room just to watch people enter the building.
I did. I did. I used to sneak down there and just walk because their eyes would just light up. I mean, and that's the kind of magic that kept me going in the I mean, they were very long days and long nights sometimes. And it'd be like, what am I doing? I'm so tired. And I would go down and just see people come in, especially kids when we'd have a school group come in. Ellie Schaefer was the head of the visitors office. And, I would always, get a heads up from some people, like, we got a big school group coming into these little kids, or, and it'd be amazing, or elderly. I'd hear a call for wheelchairs or other things. And I'd be like, I want to go down and see them because a lot of times it would just be the same reaction of, in awe, like those two groups would be the same, like
Wait, the
it'd just
kids
be
and the
like,
elderly, they both kind of
yes,
reacted
all
in the
the
same way?
time. Yes, all the time. Just like, I can't believe I'm here, especially elderly Black people, just be like, to just feel the reverence of a house that had a Black family in there. Like, it was just a whole different vibe. And I loved anybody coming through, but that was like my favorite. That was definitely my favorite, seeing those two groups come through.
Do you have a particular East Wing memory that you'd like to share?
think my favorite East Wing memory has to be my father coming through because he was so worried about what to wear. I mean, we're from Philly, so we're just, my dad's a sharp dresser, but he was like, I don't know what I wear. Do I wear what the president wears? I'm like, Dad, you don't have to do all that. And he came for his 60th birthday. I couldn't go home, and he came during the governor's dinner, and it was Hall and Oates was the performer, and they're from Philly. And so my dad's like, I can come, and I surprised them. And the chef, Chris Comerford at the time, who since retired, she made a whole dinner and set up my office so me and my dad could have dinner in my office. And then I took him to hear Hall and Oates, and he was in the back just bopping around, and it was Speaker Pelosi. It was just a moment. I feel like really was like I opened up like everything that I had to my family, to my friends, to my community, and to others. But that probably is one of my favorite memories of just having my dad walk through and, look around like, are they sure I'm supposed to be here? It's just really funny.
And you stayed, until the end. You slept
I did.
in your office,
I did.
January 19th, is that
I did.
correct? Into
That is
January
correct.
20th? You were one of the last people there to turn out the lights.
I was. And I slept in my office because the inauguration, I
You should
didn't want to have
explain
to.
that. It's not that you're being
Yes.
obsessive or something like that. It was actually
No,
what the job
no.
required.
Yes, I love my bed, so I would be home. But we didn't know how inauguration was gonna be. I wasn't really worried about the numbers of like I can't get through, to my job from I lived in Eastern Market. It was more of I don't want to be in that crowd. Like I
Uh-huh.
didn't want to be in the crowd. I didn't want to be on the train. I didn't want to have those issues and then get to the gate and then have issues just trying to get in because I had to get to the gate. So I made the choice to sleep in my office the night of the inauguration, and I did that with a bunch of us did that. Actually, there's a whole bunch of military, the White House military office, another, person from the social office slept in his office. So we did that so then we could just be on site at the time. And it was, we didn't really sleep. It was kind of just like this is it. And I snuck down to the state floor when I knew that the Obamas were done kind of walking through the family, in my PJs. I walked down there just to kind of walk around. It was quiet. The lights were out just one last time, before we turned it over, and it was that day is all a blur, but I think that I remember being like, we did all that we could. And I'm so, despite of what's coming behind us, I'm so grateful and thankful to have been part of this opportunity and have opened as many doors as I could and let out the wishes of the president and first lady, which were to represent the people.
What should people do right now if they're feeling some kind of way
Mm,
watching this? Do you
yeah.
think, how do you feel about people? There's a stream of people posting their own memories of their time at the East Wing. Do we actually need to preserve those in a
Yeah.
more formal way so we do have some memory of what used to be? How should people process what they're
hmm
going through right now if they're feeling a whole range of emotions, sadness,
hmm
anger, shock, anxiety about what they're seeing?
I think for me, community is always the answer. I think that processing in a silo is fine if that's your thing, but also there is camaraderie and there's comfort in community during joy and during sadness or during those mixed feelings. And so, we have a social office chain where we're all talking about it a little bit, and then there's another chain with First Lady folks, and there'll probably be another chain with the social office and a bunch of other Black appointees that work there on a different chain. And I think that for us, we talk about just the memories of, what we did in that space and who we brought through that space. And I think that there should be some preservation because now the photos that we all have, the memories mean so much more. They always meant something, but I could always go back with my dad and take a picture, in booksellers. Now I can't do that. I can't go back anymore in my office. So all those things now have such a more significance. So I do say to preserve those. And I also, we're both writers. Write down how you feel right now, even if it's just in a journal or somewhere, write down how you feel and maybe put it with some of the artifacts or with some of the photos. And so you have that memory, and before the anger sets in, before we have to, continue fighting for our basic human rights, take a second and say, it's okay for me to mourn and to grieve over this space that was so part of my life, and it's okay to grieve that, and grief takes time and grief is in stages. So don't say it's just silly because we're dealing with snap. Yes, that too, but we can hold both of those at the same time. And so I say process, document, talk to people, be in community, and grieve as you need to grieve, because it's not just a building. And we know the building is controversial because it was built by enslaved people and so many things. But that's even more reason why we brought so much joy in that space. And we made sure that we danced in lieu of our ancestors of what they did. So let's continue doing that. And so that's what I say people should do.
Yeah, yeah, and to pray over the building, which belongs to all of
Yeah.
us.
Yes.
It is an act of violence in the way that they're taking it down on a very old structure. It moving that quickly, you just normally think that you usually have some sort of scaffolding or buttress to protect the rest of the building, as they're tearing down this wing. But community, I think, is often the answer.
Right.
And social media, in an odd way, provides a sense of
Yeah.
community right now. And so I'm very glad that you were willing to take time to talk to me.
Of course.
I think this will provide knowledge and comfort to people. And maybe in the comment stream, people will be able to do just what you said. Write down how you feel about this. Share some of your
Hmm.
pictures. I know my husband had worked in two administrations. We had spent a lot of time in that building, and our kids are
Yes.
bombarding each other with pictures, going through their
Yeah.
old phones. Remember this, remember that,
Yeah.
remember. And that is, how they're trying to process this moment. And there are
Hmm.
some people who've never been to Washington, D.C. and never been near the White House and still feel
Hmm.
that's mine. That's my
Hmm.
tax dollars. That's my
Right.
American,
Hmm.
identity wrapped up
Right.
in that building.
Hmm.
So, this is a way for us to come together and think about it and process it and continue to fight for the country that our kids deserve.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Agreed.
Love
Agreed.
you. Thanks for taking
Love you
time.
too. Bye.